Pause for a moment, because something has already shifted, and you didn't even notice it yet. There was a silence between you and them, not the kind that comes from distance, but the kind that hides something unspoken, something delicate, something they carried quietly, as if saying it out loud would change everything. And the truth is, it would have. They wanted to tell you, more than once. There were moments when the words reached the edge of their lips, when their heart beat faster just being near you, when everything inside them whispered, "Now, say it now," but they stopped themselves. Why? Have you ever felt something so real, that it scared you? Not because it was wrong, but because it meant too much. That's where they were. And you might be wondering, what could be so important, so powerful, that someone chooses silence over expression? Stay a little longer, because this is where the story begins to unfold. It wasn't a lie they were hiding. It wasn't something dark or harmful. It was something softer, deeper, almost sacred. A truth they didn't feel ready to hold in the open. You see, sometimes people don't hide things because they want to deceive. They hide things because they don't yet understand how to protect what they feel. And this person, they've been trying to protect something for a long time. Something connected to you. Something that started quietly, almost unnoticed, like a small spark that didn't ask for attention. But over time, that spark didn't fade. It grew. Stronger, warmer, undeniable. And that's when things became complicated. Because once a feeling grows beyond a certain point, it can no longer be ignored. But it can still be feared. Let me ask you something. Have you ever sensed that they were holding back? Like there was always one more sentence they didn't say, one more truth just beneath the surface? You weren't imagining it. There was something more. And even now, as you're listening, a part of you already knows. You just haven't fully allowed yourself to see it yet. Don't skip this moment, because something important is waiting for you in the space between these words. There was a night, or maybe just a quiet moment, when everything inside them became too loud to ignore. No distractions, no noise, just them, and the truth they had been avoiding. And in that stillness, something happened. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, but clear. Like a whisper that finally made sense. And that's when they realized something they hadn't fully accepted before. Their connection to you wasn't temporary. It wasn't casual. It wasn't something they could simply move on from. It had already become part of them. And that realization, it scared them. Not because of you, but because of what it meant for them. Because once you admit something like that, you can't go back to how things were. You can't pretend it doesn't matter. You can't act like it's just another passing feeling. And they weren't ready for that kind of change. So instead of speaking, they chose silence. Instead of revealing, they chose distance. But here's the part no one talks about. Silence doesn't erase truth. It only delays it. And what is delayed, eventually finds a way to surface. In unexpected ways. Through small actions. Through subtle energy. Through moments where everything feels different, even if nothing has been said. Have you felt that shift? That slight change in how they look at you, or how they respond, or how they suddenly seem more aware of your presence. That's not random. That's not coincidence. That's the truth trying to come through, even without words. And now, something even more interesting is happening, because the very thing they tried to hide is no longer staying hidden, not because someone exposed them, but because the energy of it has become too strong to contain. And this is where things begin to unfold in a way they didn't expect. There are moments in life when truth doesn't need to be spoken loudly. It simply reveals itself, through timing, through connection, through a quiet knowing that suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. And right now, you are standing at the edge of one of those moments. You may not have all the answers yet, but you can feel something shifting, something aligning, something preparing to be understood. Stay till the end, because what you're beginning to sense is only the surface, because the truth they couldn't say was never meant to stay hidden forever. And what comes next is not just about what they feel. It's about why they felt they couldn't tell you in the first place. And that reason is more revealing than the secret itself. There was a moment, so subtle that if you weren't paying attention, you would have missed it completely, but something inside them changed. Not on the surface, not in a way the world could see, but deep within, where decisions are made long before actions follow. Because holding that truth, it started to feel heavier than hiding it. And that's when everything became more complicated. You see, the secret they carried was never just about feelings. It was about timing, about fear, about the version of themselves they believed you deserved, versus the version they thought they were. Have you ever felt like you had something beautiful to offer, but doubted whether it would be enough? That's where they stood, right between desire and hesitation. They didn't doubt you. They doubted themselves, and that changes everything, because when someone questions their own worth, even the purest truth becomes difficult to share. Even love becomes something they feel they must protect you from, instead of give to you. Pause here for a second. Because this is where their silence starts to make sense. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't indifference. It was a quiet inner conflict, one they never spoke about. They would replay moments with you in their mind. Small conversations. Simple gestures. The way you looked at them without even trying. And each time, the feeling grew stronger. But so did the question inside them, what if I'm not ready for this? And instead of risking something meaningful, they chose to wait, to observe, to stay just close enough to feel you, but far enough to avoid exposing themselves. Have you noticed that? That strange balance they keep. Like they're present, but never fully stepping in. That's not confusion, that's protection, not of themselves alone, but of what they feel for you, because once they say it, once they truly open that door, everything changes, and they know it. But here's the part that even they didn't expect. Something beyond them began to shift the situation, not forcefully, not dramatically, but gently, almost like guidance. Moments started lining up in ways they couldn't explain, thoughts about you appearing out of nowhere, memories resurfacing at unexpected times, a feeling that kept returning, no matter how much they tried to focus elsewhere. It was as if something was quietly reminding them. This matters, and no matter how much they tried to ignore it, they couldn't, because some connections don't fade with distance. They grow clearer, stronger, more undeniable, and this is where the silence begins to break. Not through words yet, but through awareness. They are starting to see something they avoided before, not just how they feel, but why they feel it. And that realization, it's bringing them closer to a truth they can no longer postpone. Don't skip this part, because something important is unfolding right now. They are beginning to understand that what they felt wasn't accidental. It wasn't random. It wasn't something that would simply pass with time. It had meaning, depth, a reason. And when a person reaches that point, when they stop questioning the feeling and start accepting it, something inside them softens. The fear doesn't disappear instantly, but it loses its control, and slowly, very slowly, They begin to shift from silence toward expression, but not in the way you might expect, because when someone has held something in for so long, they don't suddenly say everything. They reveal it in pieces, in small, almost unnoticeable ways, through attention, through presence, through moments where they linger just a little longer than before. Have you started noticing that? The way they seem more aware of you now. More careful. More intentional. That's not coincidence. That's the truth, finding its way out. And yet, there's still one layer they haven't crossed. One final hesitation that keeps them from fully speaking, not because they don't want to, but because they're still trying to understand something deeper, something about you, and something about themselves. And this next part, this is where everything begins to shift in a way neither of you expected, because the reason they held back is now the very reason they're being drawn closer. And when that realization fully settles in, it won't stay hidden anymore. Not this time. Not after everything that's already been felt. Stay a little longer. Because what they are about to understand next will change the way they see you. And the way they see themselves. Completely. Something unexpected is happening now, and it's not loud, it's not obvious, but it's powerful enough to change everything. Because the one thing they were trying to avoid is now the very thing they can no longer escape. And it didn't happen suddenly. It unfolded quietly, layer by layer, realization by realization. At first, it was just a thought. A simple, passing awareness that didn't seem important. But then it returned. Again, and again, and again. Until it no longer felt like a thought. It felt like truth. Have you ever tried to ignore something, only for it to follow you everywhere? That's what they're experiencing now, because the connection they tried to keep under control has started to take its own shape. And here's the part they didn't expect. It's no longer just about how they feel, it's about what they see in you. Take a breath here. Because this is where everything becomes more revealing. They've been observing you more closely than you realize. Not in an obvious way, but in the quiet details. The way you carry yourself. The way you respond to things. The strength you show without even talking about it. And the softness you hold without losing yourself. They noticed all of it, and slowly, without even planning to, they began to compare, not with other people, but with their own expectations. And what they realized was something that shifted their entire perspective. You didn't just meet their expectations. You changed them. You showed them a version of connection that felt real, not rushed, not forced, not uncertain. And that's when something inside them finally became clear. The reason they couldn't speak before wasn't because the truth was unclear. It was because it was too clear, too real, too important. And they didn't trust themselves to handle something that meaningful. Let that sink in for a second. Because it changes everything you thought you understood. They weren't confused. They were overwhelmed. Overwhelmed by how natural it felt with you. Overwhelmed by how easily you became part of their inner world. Overwhelmed by the idea that this connection might actually matter in a way they weren't prepared for. And when something feels that significant, people don't always run toward it. Sometimes they pause. Sometimes they hesitate. Sometimes they step back, just to make sure they don't lose control. But here's the turning point. And don't miss this. That hesitation. It's starting to fade, not because the feeling became weaker, but because they are becoming stronger. Stronger in understanding. Stronger in acceptance. Stronger in facing what they once avoided. And now, they're beginning to see something they couldn't see before. That holding back didn't protect the connection. It only kept them from experiencing it fully. And once that realization enters, everything begins to shift. Their thoughts about you are no longer uncertain. Their feelings are no longer something they question. Instead, they're becoming something they recognize, something they're starting to accept without resistance. And when acceptance replaces doubt, action is never far behind. But wait. Because there's still one final layer to uncover. One last truth they haven't fully admitted yet. Not to you. Not even completely to themselves. It's subtle. But it's the key to everything. Because what they're realizing now goes beyond just feeling connected to you. It goes deeper, into something that feels familiar, almost like they've known this connection before. Even if they can't explain how. Have you ever met someone and felt like, this isn't new, it's just being remembered? That's exactly where they are right now. And that realization, it's the one thing they can't ignore anymore. It's pulling them closer. Not with pressure, but with clarity. And the moment they fully accept that feeling, the silence they once chose will no longer feel right. It won't make sense anymore, because some truths aren't meant to stay hidden. Especially when they've already been felt so deeply. Stay till the end. Because what comes next is not just about them finally understanding. It's about what they're going to do with that understanding, and that is where everything finally begins to reveal itself. There is a quiet shift happening now, so gentle that it doesn't demand attention, yet strong enough to change the direction of everything. Because they are no longer standing where they once were. That place of hesitation, of holding back, of questioning every feeling. It's starting to feel unfamiliar to them, almost like they've outgrown it without realizing. And here's the part that matters. They're beginning to feel the absence of something. Not your presence, because you've always been there in their awareness. But the absence of expression, the absence of honesty, the absence of saying what has been sitting in their heart for so long. And strangely, that silence no longer feels safe to them. It feels incomplete. Have you ever held something in for so long that one day it just doesn't feel right anymore? That's exactly where they are now. And this is where everything starts to turn. Because the same silence they once chose for protection is now the very thing creating distance they don't want. Let that settle for a moment. Because this realization changes how they see everything. They're beginning to understand that by staying quiet, they weren't preserving the connection. They were limiting it, holding it in a space that could never fully grow. And something inside them is no longer okay with that. Not after everything they've felt. Not after everything they've realized. And this is where their energy toward you begins to shift in a way you can actually sense. It's subtle, but it's real. They are becoming more present, more attentive, more aware of the moments they share with you, not because they're trying to act differently, but because they feel differently now. And when someone feels differently, their actions naturally begin to follow. You might notice it in small ways first. The way they listen more closely. The way they respond with more intention. The way they seem to linger just a little longer in conversations that once felt brief. These are not random changes. These are reflections of something deeper unfolding inside them. Because they are no longer asking themselves if this connection matters. They are starting to ask, what do I do with it now? And that question, it's the beginning of everything. Pause here. Because this is the exact point where silence transforms into movement. Not rushed, not forced, but inevitable. They are starting to feel a quiet pull. Not one that overwhelms them, but one that guides them. A sense that something needs to be said. Not perfectly, not all at once, but honestly. And yet, there's still a final hesitation, not as strong as before, but still present, and it comes from one simple thought. What if I say it, and everything changes? Because deep down, they know it will. But what? They are beginning to understand now is that everything has already changed. The moment they accepted their truth. The moment they stopped denying what they feel. The moment they allowed themselves to see you clearly. That's when everything shifted, whether spoken or not. It's already real, and this realization, it's giving them a kind of quiet courage they didn't have before. Not loud confidence, not dramatic action, but a steady, growing readiness. And here's where it becomes even more meaningful. Because what they are preparing to express is not just about how they feel, it's about what they've understood, about why you matter to them in a way they can no longer ignore. And when someone reaches that level of clarity, they don't stay silent forever. They can't, because truth, once fully accepted, naturally seeks expression. Stay a little longer. Because what they are about to do next is not something impulsive. It's something they've slowly, carefully, deeply moved toward. And when it finally happens, it won't feel forced. It won't feel unexpected. It will feel like something that was always meant to be said. Finally finding its moment. But there's still one final piece. One last realization they must fully embrace before they speak. And that piece is not just about them. It's about you. And once they see that clearly, there will be nothing left holding them back.